Let's talk about preparing for assignments. And I'm specifically talking about preparing for interpreting assignments, right? Whether or not you should prepare for translation is a different question altogether. Somebody once opened my eyes to the fact that maybe you should, but that's a different, what's that quote from the never-ending story? That's a different story that should be told that's another story that should be told another time. Anyway, how would I prepare? And I think you're going to find this in common among many professional and master interpreters. And maybe you already do a lot of these things, but let me share them anyways. First and foremost, I would be looking for terminology, right? Because terminology is the only thing, in my viewpoint, that can ever really trip up and trap up a master interpreter. For example, I even contradicted a lawyer once to get my hands on the necessary terminology, and you should if you need it. This was a very intense, very serious criminal case, and me and my mom were working this case. We were supposed to be starting on Monday. My mom is also a professional interpreter and translator, and this was Friday night, and I knew that we were starting Monday. I knew that there would be expert witness testimony. So I write the lawyer, I had her email, and I say, I need the documents, the expert witness reports, whatever you can provide. And she was a very experienced and good lawyer, but she had never actually worked with interpreters, and she says, no, this is going to be in violation of my client's confidentiality. And so I sort of had to push it. I was like, you know, I can't force you, but come Monday, I'm going to have to say, Your Honor, the interpreters were not allowed to prepare by being denied the documents that we need for practice. And she was like, oh, I just talked to my colleague and he said it's okay. So push it if you must, be polite about it, but get your hands on the right terminology. Normally, people are quite willing actually to give you preparation documents. And if it's anything but a court case, it's much simpler. But I would always politely, yet insistently and persistently ask for the best documents and things that you can to study. If you don't have those, but you know the topic, of course you can always just Google things. Google, for example, let's say that I had to interpret about steamboats on the Mississippi in the 19th century. Well, I would be looking for videos, I would be looking for books, and then I would go practice simultaneously interpreting those videos or translating those books, especially to a colleague, a native of that language, have them give me feedback and come up, this is actually important what I'm going to say right now, come up with terms beforehand of how you're going to interpret these particular things. And a lot of them are already existing terms, like you don't have to reinvent the wheel of a steamboat, or you don't have to reinvent the translation for steamboat. Some of these things, however, could be interpreted or translated in different ways, all of which would be right. So you just come up with your own and stick to it so that in the moment you don't have to think. The less thinking you have to do about terminology in the heat of passion or in the heat of translation, or actually interpreting, sorry, the better, right? So that's what I would be looking for, especially terminology. I remember we did this job with my friend, the American Lisa, Elizabeth was her name. She was a graduate of Monterey, and a Russian English interpreter, an American. And she was very diligent, even better about preparation than I was. And I provided my veteran expertise and experience, and she provided the preparation. And she created this beautiful glossary of terms, and it was super useful. And then come the day of the assignment, it was much easier. It was still tough, but it was much easier. It was a medical job for Harvard. We worked through the night, actually. Okay, but I would also be just interpreting on the topic for the sake of interpreting, just to get familiar with it, get in the flow. If you know the speaker, obviously find the speaker and interpret some of their clips. That's really helpful because they might have their own mannerisms. They might have some of their own slang that nobody else uses. Like one of the reasons, for example, when Grant Cardone's books were being released in Russia and he was going over to Moscow to speak on stage, I told the conference organizers, and I had a full right to say so, I said, nobody can interpret this guy better than me because, one, I'm just the interpreter that I am, but moreover, I just translated 2 of his books. I know the way he thinks, I know his terminology, I know what he's going to mean, and I still made a few mistakes on stage, but that's another matter. By the way, the reason actually I'm gonna share this and be a little bit vulnerable with you. I'll even share one stupid mistake that I made. I can't even believe I made it. I fixed it right away, but it took me a second. And he was like making a joke and saying how you can use your smartphone to advertise in the moment. And he was like, if you don't have a smartphone, and he punched up smart, what sort of a phone do you have? I kind of missed the joke. I don't even know how I missed the joke. But anyway, but one of the reasons, not to make excuses, but one of the things I asked for and was not allowed to do, I said, I want to meet the speaker beforehand. I want to practice with him for like 2 minutes and get in the flow. I want to talk to him, and I wasn't allowed to do that. And so when we came out on stage, we were not really a duet. I wouldn't say it was a duel, but we were not synchronized. Like at one point, he even said to me, "You're getting in my way, man." And that never really should happen, but it's because I've never worked with this guy, and I asked to let me practice with him. This is actually now kind of a mean, nasty point to conference organizers. Like, trust that interpreters know what they're doing. Trust that they're professionals, just like a doctor would. If a doctor says, I need this lab from you, then, you know, a patient normally doesn't argue. Well, most interpreters, if they say, I need this, I need that, they are not just being fussy or fastidious or anything like that. They actually need it for better performance. So maybe I should have insisted, but anyway, it came out all right. I would give myself a B+ or an A- for that interpretation, but that's another thing, is if you can get there early, speak to the speaker, sort of even practice interpreting with them for a minute or two, get on the same wavelength, that's super helpful. So I think I voiced most things, except we did another video on just training, right? Always be training. And theoretically, you should be training all the time. So it shouldn't just necessarily be on the spur of the moment because you have a job. But the lazy bum that I am, no, not necessarily, but you know, if I haven't been training, but I know I have an important and vital job coming up in a week or in 2 weeks, I will at least start training with 2 weeks in advance and doing shadowing exercises and paraphrasing exercises. And we'll go through these in a different video and what they are, but start training whatever, simultaneous in general. I have a good friend, Tony, in Los Angeles, Tony with 2 N's, not that you needed to know that, but he once said to me, Vladimir, because I told him, Tony, I'm out of shape, we're both runners. He was actually a world-class runner back in his heyday. And I said, Tony, I'm so out of shape, I haven't been training. And he said, well, Vladimir, if you've at least been jogging, you should be okay. You can, you know, revamp your training or bring it back in a week or 2. And it's the same here. If you've at least been doing some general simultaneous, general consecutive practicing, you'll be okay. But then also do some job-specific training. If you have any techniques that you use that I haven't mentioned, write me, post them in the comments. Yeah, I'm becoming a professional YouTuber here, God forbid. But hopefully this was somewhat useful, and it is totally dark. I feel like I'm staring into this camera that's gonna shoot me with darkness or with light, so I'll see you in the next clip. Ciao.